Hi everyone, my name is Peter Muller and I'm a mixing and mastering engineer based in Germany, Europe. Today I'm going to do a shootout between an AI-based compressor plugin and a classic hardware compressor. Let's get to it. Welcome back. I hope everyone had a great summer. I was really busy the last month and couldn't find the time to shoot new videos, but now things have calmed down a bit and so I'm back on YouTube with some new stuff. In this video I'm going to do a shootout between an AI-based compressor plugin, the Sonible Pure Comp, and a classic Neve 33609N hardware compressor. It seems like everyone is talking about AI software these days, and especially in the music scene there are really mixed feelings about this development. Studio owners, audio engineers and music producers, mastering engineers for example, fear that their jobs could become obsolete in the future. On the other hand, a lot of musicians without mixing and mastering experience have high hopes that AI software will allow them to mix and master their music on the industry level without having to hire a specialized mixing or mastering engineer. The promise of AI software is that you can do something by a few clicks without necessarily having the knowledge about the subject and the process. That sounds really cool because that would mean that everyone can do everything on his own and there would be no need to spend money on a professional audio engineer anymore. But it also means that the AI software really must deliver. As soon as it makes you suggestions, leaves options open that need further adjustments, then it again requires some kind of knowledge and the ability for critical listening. Because if you're not able to hear what the impact of your adjustments on the mix or master would be, how are you going to be able to make the right decisions? Personally, I don't condemn AI technology in plugins. It can be really inspiring to see with what kind of suggestions it comes up. So it could potentially be a helper even for the experienced audio engineer. But if you look at the stuff iZotope is doing with the Ozone plugins, that's really amazing. But if you do the automatic mastering process, it says after the analysis, that's a good starting point. And it's true, when I checked this out, I never really felt that this is the ultimate result. But then you have to open like 6 or 7 plugins in the suggested mastering chain and start to make adjustments. How are you going to do this, for example, on a compressor, if you don't know what attack, release, ratio, threshold are? What these parameters are doing and which settings have which kind of impact? How are you going to handle this? So I think when we want to measure the quality of results between AI mixing and mastering and conventional mixing and mastering, for example in a hybrid situation, like many of the professional studios have these days, then we have to let the AI software make its decision alone and compare its result with the results of the conventional and manual process. Because only then we can find out if someone without any knowledge is able to create results which are on par with the results from a professional audio engineer. Okay, now let's move on with the shootout and I will introduce the candidates. The AI plugin I'm checking out today is the Sonible Pure Comp. Sonible is an Austrian company that specialized on AI-powered plugins, and the Pure Comp is part of their Pure bundle with 4 plugins, which are reverb, EQ, limiter and a compressor. Sonible claims on their website, and I quote, "All 4 plugins combine the pro-level sound enhancement of our digital processing with a simplified control set, automatic parametrization for high-quality results, and AI-powered processing and characteristic profiles." I've downloaded the trial version of it, which is fully functional, and if you buy it, it will cost you around 50 euros, but at the moment they have a special pricing of around about 30 euros. Let's take a closer look. So this is the user interface, and you can also see the manual on the right side. On top you find the so-called learning section. You can open the drop-down menu and there you can choose between different instruments like bass, drums, kick, snare, keys, guitar, etc. and of course also vocals. For everything which is not on the list, Sonible proposes that you use the universal mode. Once you have chosen from the menu, you simply start to playback the audio material and push the record button on the left, next to the drop-down menu. Then the plugin is learning and a few moments later it will come up with a compressor setting which shall be appropriate for your playback material. Below that you can see this huge circle where the amount of compression strength is shown in a scale from 0 to 100. So I guess it's the percentage of compression added. There are no further parameters shown like attack, release, etc. After the plugin came up with a result, you can grab the white line and dial in or turn down the strength of compression. Now, as I said before, if someone without knowledge is using AI software, I would expect that the compression setting the algorithm comes up with should be right and no further adjustments should be necessary. We will see that in a minute in the shootout if the software comes up with something usable. On the right side of the percentage setting, you can see another setting which is called clarity. There's a pop-up for explanation and it says, clarity dynamically smoothens out tonal imbalances and ensures a consistent tonal as well as dynamic balance of your signal. Okay, I have to say it again. How is someone who is not able to critically listen, like an audio engineer for example, able to hear tonal imbalances and consistency problems? So you would just grab the button and mess around with it. If the software really delivers, then it also should come up with something usable straight away. On the left side, there's another field where you can select between 3 compression styles. There's a pop-up saying, click to choose your compression style. The clean compression style aims for a transparent sound, while the dirty style adds a warm compression character. Choose mixed if you want to go for a good balance between those two settings. This is interesting, but you can't see any parameters that would explain what happens or what these terms, clean, mixed, dirty, really mean. If you look at what compressors do, it's pretty clear. You can raise the amount of compression by using ratio and threshold, which then will go from a light transparent compression to a heavy compression. There will be also coloration added if you drive a compressor harder, depending on what type of compressor you use. It could be tubes or transformers like the Mariner and the Neve. But here we have to live with a description by Sonible without knowing what's really going on in the algorithm. The other candidate of the shootout is a real classic hardware compressor, the Neve 33609N by AMS Neve. AMS Neve is the successor of Rupert Neve's original company. The 33609 was released in 1985 and became a real classic. It is still produced and you can find it in many studios around the globe. This compressor has a diode bridge design, which means that the compression is done by exploiting the electrical properties of diodes and mounting them in a bridge configuration. It's kinda complex, so if you want to know more, please look it up on the web. This type of compression is known to be very smooth, but even when you hit it hard, it always stays very musical. And finally, with the 3 famous Mariner transformers, you get a typical Neve sound and a really nice mix glue. AMS Neve claims on their website that this unit is, and I quote, the world's finest stereo compressor, bar none. This desert island stereo compressor offers comprehensive limiting and compression facilities, ideal for music recording, mastering, post-production and broadcast applications. I have the 33609 in my hybrid studio setup and it will cost you around 3,800 euros. Let's take a closer look. Okay, so you have 2 rows of controls. The upper one is for channel 1, which is left, and below that channel 2, which is right. On the left side of the unit you see the limiter section, which I will not use in this shootout as we are going to compare the compression of the pure comp with the compressor section of the 33609. I know that Sonible also has a limiter out named Pure Limit, and I think this could be something for another shootout between the AI limiter and the limiter section of the Neve. Okay, let's go back to the layout. You have the usual controls for each channel, starting with threshold, then recovery, which is another term for release, and it has also 2 automatic release presets, A1 and A2, and they work really well on most of the material. I call it the AI of the 80s, the analog intelligence. Then you see the gain makeup and the ratio. There's no separate knob for fine-tuning the attack time, like you see on other types of compressors, but there's a toggle switch where you can choose between fast and slow attack. Slow attack automatically activates a high-pass filter that reduces sensitivity to low frequencies by 6 dB octave at 100 Hz. This tunes out kick drums and other low peaks that may otherwise trigger the compressor. The other toggle switches you see are for bypassing the compressor, switching from mono to stereo and from internal to external control, which means you can connect multiple units and have them controlled remotely. And finally, on the right side there are 2 VU meters that indicate the amount of gain reduction on each channel. So these are the details about the 2 candidates. Now let's talk about the test conditions. It's not so easy because we don't know the algorithm of the pure comp, and also there's no way to set any of the usual values like ratio, attack, release manually. But what we have here are the 3 main characteristics to choose from, which are clean, mixed and dirty. And I translate that to the 33609 in choosing 3 different settings, which are light compression for clean, medium compression for mixed and hard compression for dirty. So these are the settings I used on the 33609. Clean, attack slow, release A1, ratio 2:1, gain reduction, maximum 4 dB. Mixed attack slow, release A1, ratio 4:1, gain reduction maximum 8 dB. Dirty attack slow, release A1, ratio 6:1, gain reduction maximum 12 dB. As the Neve is an analog device, we have to leave the DAW, and I will do the AD-DA conversion on a Cranesong Head Quantum, which is a high-end mastering grade converter, and I will not use its DSP section, so it's a totally clean conversion. Now with a Pure Comp, I will do the same. I will not bounce it internally. I will send the signal out through the Cranesong, so both of the candidates had the same signal flow into the analog domain and back into the DAW. Okay, enough talking, enough explanations. Now let's jump into the first round, and this is the drum bus. We will go through the 3 settings, and after that I'll do a quick analysis of what I heard and what my perception is. Wow, this was very interesting and also surprising. I was really shocked to hear what the PureCom came up with after the learning process. Even on the lightest compression, it sounded really uneven, and I felt that it really had problems to handle the kick drum in this groove. You could clearly hear that there was no high-pass filter involved in the unknown algorithm. The kick drum triggered the compression and made it pump, but not pumping in a musical way. It was just completely uneven and all over the place. And this happened already in the clean mode, and it was getting worse and worse, so the dirty mode was a total mess. The Neve on the other side was reacting really relaxed and musical. It gave a nice little mix glue on the lightest compression and more prominent glue on the medium compression. And even on the highest compression level, it did not mess up the signal. It still sounded musical and really forgiving, even on extreme settings. On top of that, you could hear a slight change in the tone. The Marionette transformers add a little more mids in the frequency range, but in a pleasant way, so everything sounded more finished, polished, and even. And I really liked what it did with the drum sound. So I think we have a clear winner here on the drum bass, which is the Neve. So let's go for the second round, bass guitar. Okay, so what I noticed here with the Pure Comp is that the sound suddenly changed when it was engaged. It took away some low end and the signal got slightly brighter. And I also didn't feel that there is some glue on the bass, that it got smoothed out and was more consistent, so it sits better in the mix. Because this is what I expect from compression on a bass track. And finally, the algorithm had problems to set the right release time. You could hear that in the longer notes, half notes at the end of the pattern. You could hear the tone getting much louder towards the end of the ringing note. Okay, and the Neve did exactly what I would like to hear on the bass. The bass got more density, glue, and it was much more consistent on all three compression settings. Even the long notes were almost properly detected by the auto release, and the volume didn't increase as much as on the Smart Comp. And again, you could hear that the transformers gave the sound a bit of more mid-range and warmth, which is what the typical 33609 vibe is, and it leads to a better presence in the mix. So I think the winner here is again the Neve. Let's go for the third round, and this is Saxophone. Okay, so I was surprised again about the behavior of the Pure Comp. When it was engaged, some of the high frequencies suddenly were turned down, and this caused the alto saxophone sound to lose air and sparkle. The compression strength sounded okay to me on the clean and mix mode, but in the dirty mode, the Pure Comp had this strange behavior like on the drum bus. There was pumping all over the place and it sounded really messy. This is very strange because the algorithm had the chance to relearn the dirty mode, and I think this shouldn't happen. So the winner of the third round is also the Neve. Okay, let's go into our final round, which is the mix bus. Okay, with the Pure Comp, I was a bit nervous at the beginning because I was expecting the same weird behavior, like for example on drums. And when it was engaged, there was some pumping from the kick drum, but then this problem disappeared. At least in the clean and mix mode, there was a little more consistency in the compression. But it did not sound really exciting because you could hear how the transients were sometimes coming through and then the compression was kicking in harder after that. So there it's really lacking character and mix glue, and you never had the feeling it sounded, let's say, radio ready. And in the dirty mode, the mess was coming back, you could say, and it started its nervous pumping again even after relearning the material. The Neve 33609, on the other hand, is one of those classic compressors well known for the right amount of mix glue, and everything sounds more compact and the transients are rounded off in a nice way. Even the hardest compression could not really destroy this impression, and I have to say it again. The Marionette transformers are really magical. There is a slight frequency change, and okay, I really don't like the term warm because it's overused in the audio industry, but anyway, this is the word which describes it the best. Warm and pleasant for the ears. It's just nice to listen to the result when you send material through the Neve. Well, the last round also has a clear winner, which is the Neve. So what are my final thoughts? That was a very interesting experience because everyone is talking about AI these days, and I often hear that mixing and mastering engineers might be replaced by AI software in the future, when everyone can get a professional sound by just a few clicks. Well, I really don't think that this will happen in such a radical way, because a proposal from an AI plugin needs to be checked and analyzed by someone who has the skills to hear and to judge if the setting works or not. And who could do that if not a skilled mixing or mastering engineer? So again, this is more like another marketing hype, and if you look back like 15 or 20 years, when audio interfaces became affordable for everyone to record in studio quality at home, I mean, what happened then? You had a lot of people trying to self-record and self-produce, but how much of that stuff became relevant, like being in the charts, played on the radio? That was a really small percentage, and in the end, not much has changed. You still needed the skills of a professional mixing and mastering engineer to get a competitive result on the industry level, a radio-ready sound. Now, some of you might think this comparison was unfair because the PureComp is more on the cheap side and there's much better AI software around. Well, maybe there are better ones and we will see what's coming up in the future, but I nevertheless think that this shootout is representative if you look at the promise all AI software developers give to the customers, that there is professional mixing and mastering available for everyone just by a few clicks. And this is not the case. There are still decisions to be made, and to do that you need to be able to hear what's going on. That's what we call critical listening, and this requires a special talent and also many years of experience behind the mixing and mastering deck. And another thing we can clearly hear in such a test is that analog hardware is still relevant in the studio. Most of the top studios and engineers worldwide like to work in a hybrid environment because there are some great pieces of hardware out there which beat any plug-in on the market. It doesn't need to be as much analog hardware as we had before the transition to digital happened. But a few high-end pieces in your rack can really make a difference. Like the Neve 33609, this is a compressor limiter I work with every day, because everything you put in comes out more refined with more character, sounds ready to mix or master. And I tend to get rid of hardware that is not significantly better than a plug-in. Then I might as well use the plug-in, but I keep the hardware which really makes a difference, and the Neve is one of those boxes. It's a true desert island compressor. That's it for now. I hope this video was useful for you, and if you like the music here in this shootout, I will share a link in the description. The track is called The Sneak, and it was written by myself and played by some great musicians from Germany and the UK. You are also welcome to leave a comment below and subscribe to my channel so you will get notified when I upload a new video. Let me know your opinion or ask any question related to the subject. See you next time.